CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is in Ottawa tracking the federal government's response to a possible work stoppage at Air Canada. Joining me now live. Megan, Federal Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu has issued a statement today. What does it say?
Well, she says that this has been a disappointing development that the airline and the union have each issued these strike notices and the lockout notices. She says she's personally met with both sides during the bargaining process, which has been going on for quite some time. And she says her role in all of this is to ensure that both sides have the tools they need and can get from the federal government to try and reach an agreement. And one of those tools is federal mediators, and they have been part of the negotiations. And she says that they stand by, ready, willing, and able to keep working with both sides to try and get a deal, that they're prepared to work around the clock. She says she's closely monitoring this situation and will provide any and all resources she can to help. Here's what else the minister says in this statement, Sarah. She says, "I understand this dispute is causing a great deal of frustration and anxiety to Canadians who are traveling or worrying about how they'll get home. I urge both parties to put their differences aside, come back to the bargaining table and get this done now for the many travelers who are counting on you." So for now, the minister not making any kind of commitment one way or the other about any actions that the government might take if this strike or lockout goes ahead. They are sort of under pressure, the federal government, and they have received official requests to intervene if it gets to that point. Air Canada has requested that the minister act under Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code. This gives her the power and authority to refer the matter to the Canada Industrial Relations Board and direct it to take certain action, like going to binding arbitration, which is what Air Canada wants the minister to do, essentially. So this is not the same as back to work legislation. That is another road that the federal government could go down if it wanted to. If it did want to try and do that, MPs would have to come back here to Ottawa. They're not here right now. They are on a summer break. But using 107 of the Canada Labour Code is another way of the federal government to step in to the contract negotiations. And the federal government has done this before in other labor disputes. And that has been challenged by labor unions in the courts. But Air Canada is saying in this instance right now, this would be an appropriate step for the government to take. It says partly because no deal has been reached after quite a long period of bargaining. And they also say on their website that there's, quote, no prospect for resolution in the foreseeable future. And Air Canada talking about the impact that these flight disruptions, if they do go ahead and have to ground all their flights, or the ones impacted by this strike or lockout, what an impact that would have on the Canadian economy. And we are hearing about those concerns from the Canadian business community as well. Here's what we're hearing from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. It says, "We're calling on the airline and union to resolve this issue with no disruption to service. If this is unsuccessful, Ottawa needs to immediately intervene to avoid the significant economic damage a strike would have on Canada's economy." Similar sentiment from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. They say if parties cannot reach a negotiated agreement, the federal government should be ready to intervene to avoid a prolonged disruption to Canadian air travel and shipping. "We urge the federal government and all parties to continue to put the best interests of our country's businesses, workers, and communities at the forefront." And these groups, Sarah, mentioning sort of, the uncertainty that the Canadian business community, business owners are currently facing anyway with the tariffs and the trade war, and now this. And so that is the request from them to the federal government. The minister said in that statement that she put out in terms of the airline's request for binding arbitration that she's asked the union to respond to that. The union has already responded to that because Air Canada has already suggested to the union that they go to binding arbitration, and the union's rejected that for various reasons, including that they want their members to be able to vote on a collective agreement if one is reached at the negotiating table, rather than a contract being imposed on them. And they have other reasons for rejecting arbitration as well. So that's where things stand right now in terms of the government's perspective. If there is a lockout or a strike, then pressure might mount on the minister, on the federal government to step in and take some action. But for now, the sentiment we're hearing from the minister is that the two sides should get a deal at the bargaining table.
CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick in Ottawa. Thank you.